I do want to ask you this question then, though. Do they, is now the time to, they could go out and get somebody. They've been mentioned, they're the team that has assets. They're going to be mentioned Jimmy Butler, De'Aaron Fox, LaMelo Ball. They've already been mentioned for two of those guys. I feel like I have a contrarian answer to this question, which is why I want to ask you, is now the time to do that? I'm not even saying it needs to be, well, I guess I am looking at it through the lens of a bigger name, but if you're the Rockets, you have the assets to do this. You're really good, by the way. This isn't, and I think that's part of the confusion with the Rockets too, is they have one of the 5 best point differentials against top 10 point differential teams.
Yeah.
This team has picked up some big time victories. And so I understand the temptation to say, well, they can acquire someone who makes a meaningful difference, call it a number 2 guy. And they don't need to give up any of their core players basically to do so because the salary matching they have and the picks that they have. Is now the time to do it?
Well, why isn't it? Why wouldn't it be the time? Because you don't know yet. Can some of the guys currently here develop into the types of players we need? Because they've got, it's been a story for a couple of years. They're loaded with young prospects, right? Is it because you think, so the reason I answer with a question is if it's Fox, I think you go do it, because I think Fox addresses so much of what you need and doesn't really take anything off the table. You could even it doesn't have, I get, you got to have salary going out, but you don't even need to think about oh, well, what do we do with Van Vliet? Van Vliet can come off the bench and run second units if you want, if you don't want to play them together. I wouldn't do it for anybody. I don't Butler doesn't do it for me.
That's a no. Yeah.
Levine doesn't do it for me. Ingram doesn't do it for me. So if it's Fox, feels like a different class of asset because of his youth, because of his how good he is now and how long he can stay this good. But I'm curious to hear your rationale for why now isn't the time. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but my gut would be if you can get Fox, you should probably do it.
I do think I land there. I was trying to think of the players that would move, because my answer is no. I don't think now, if you're talking about the one I've advocated, can they use the Jock Landale, Jae'Sean Tate, Jeff Green, Steven, any of those contracts to get more shooting in here, a Duncan Robinson type, or just insert shooter there that might get rotation minutes. My reservation though is, for one, trading Alperen Şengün, or more importantly, Jalen Green. You can't do it right now, because of the way that the poison pill works. Jalen Green is an example. He counts as $12.4 million in outgoing salary for Houston. And then he counts as $29.5 million in incoming money for another team. That's just too big of a gap to you can do it, but it's too complicated midseason. And I think Jalen Green absolutely needs to go out in any deal that they're making that's larger, because taking on his deal at this point is probably going to be part of the appeal. If you're the Rockets, the other team taking on his deal. And so what are you going to do if you trade for a De'Aaron Fox? You're going to then try and find a taker for Jalen Green over the summer, in which case, what is that doing for you? So the timing feels off with, I don't want to, yes, you could use Fred VanVleet as a team option for salary matching. You have Dylan Brooks. I just mentioned all the expiring guys. You could step ladder your way there. You can do it, but I'm of the mind that you already have not too many guys, but Reed Shepherd doesn't get consistent playing time. And so, or it doesn't get a ton of playing time. So why are you going to even complicate the pecking order more to where if you get, let's use De'Aaron Fox as an example, who I want to be clear, our colleague Eric Pincus at Bleacher Report, by the way, came up with a trade that would get Houston De'Aaron Fox without costing them any of their Phoenix Suns picks. Reed Shepherd goes out, Amen Thompson stays. I probably, push comes to shove, I do something like that. But at the same time, if you get a De'Aaron Fox or someone else, you're probably hurting Jalen Green's trade value down the line, because his role is going to get smaller. So you become better now, but I don't think it optimizes your roster moving forward. And honestly, I think the bigger thing for me is I want more information on this team. There's no move. There's no can't miss move that won't be available to you over the offseason. And when it becomes easier to use Jalen Green specifically as part of that, the salary matching going out. And then also, it kind of leaves open the possibility, everything we're just describing, there's a chance that Reed Shepherd can do it. And why not give him the opportunity before you go that route? And look, he's probably not going to get that opportunity this season. That does lead me to my final concern here. How often do these midseason trades result in just smooth sailing? And I keep coming back to the Timberwolves trading for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, where it seems like some things are starting to be figured out now, almost halfway through the season. You're not going to have that kind of time after the trade deadline. Like, so I would just rather, when you're dealing with so many youngsters, do I believe that the stuff we think they need on offense is already on the roster? I think it could be Reed Shepherd. I don't think he's ever going to have that opportunity, at least this season. So the answer is probably no, but I don't think there's going to be a big enough trade-off to where you're going to get the boost that you need immediately that would convince me to, well, I'm going to compromise getting more information on the players I have in place just so I can be slightly more appealing in the play. Because this team is their vitals. They're a title contender. They're not winning the title this year.
Right.
Like De'Aaron Fox is not pushing them to a title. And so if I'm the Rockets, I mean this as a compliment. Some fans will probably take it as an insult. I'm just waiting. Again, if it's Fox or LaMelo Ball is kind of the other name I'm considering it, and you could talk me into it. I just don't see as much value in the Rockets making the consolidation trade mid-season as I think some other people do.
Yeah, I really the idea of it being a mistake to sort of acquire players at the cost of or over the top of your young guys that you think are going to develop. Shepherd was one. We haven't even talked about really Cam Whitmore, who knows, but like if Cam Whitmore becomes a really good NBA player, he'll probably be the type of player that they would be going out to, like the guy who just scores in bunches and can be an offense by himself. Like, not saying that's going to happen, but if things go as well as they can for Whitmore, that's who I see him being, is like, oh, we need that guy. He can get us 26 a game, moderate efficiency, can go get his own shot, all that stuff. The risk in that, and I think the most compelling part of the argument is what you said about just the timing of it and like the poison pill stuff. And like, it's just, yeah, you're right. Like midseason is not the time to do it. I think I agree with that now that you've talked me through it. The risk of like being concerned about bringing in someone over the top of Shepherd or whatever, who's just like not going to give them the opportunity, is that like Shepherd's value or Whitmore's value is actually going to go down. Because if we go through another year of this, the mystery box stuff is washed off a little bit. And now it's like, you know, I'm trying to think of an example of someone who you could have traded for a lot. I'm just thinking about a bunch of Warriors.
Well, think about this is on a smaller scale, but think about what happened with the Knicks and Obi Toppin.
Sure. Yeah.
To how much his trade value degraded year over year, and they ended up moving him for second round compensation.
Yeah. Brandon Pajemski right now. Like, oh, we can't trade him. And then he has a horrible start to the season. And that's like, well, his value is lower. Like, because he got the opportunity and then he didn't do anything with it. And so his value, like that could happen with Shepherd or Whitmore or whoever else. But I like the idea that they're like the Rockets are good. Like they're ahead of schedule again, because we didn't see a leap like this. And they made one last year. So it's like you're a year plus ahead of schedule on any like rational development curve. So I think I agree with you that they don't need to do it. But if the question is the offense, like wherever it comes from, organic growth, trade, it isn't good enough, and it has to be better if they're going to contend like for real.
And by the way, the other thing too is just title windows are so fleeting now that you don't necessarily want to start the clock sooner than you have to. And your point about some players not being worth as much this summer, I totally get, but maybe internally, if you acquire De'Aaron Fox, you're not expecting a championship this year, but like the entire interpretation or view of your team shifts.
Yeah,
as soon as like most people don't consider like, oh, this is going to take a while to figure out. Like, they don't fucking care. Like if you make that, and to be fair, if you're going to make a move that costs you multiple firsts and maybe a prospect, like a blue chip prospect or two, that pressure's it's innate, and it's probably also fair. I'm probably, again, like how many teams have been able to kind of, I'm not saying pearl clutch all of this, but aside from Boston and Oklahoma City, and like Boston has undergone a lot of different iterations, it's just like you don't see these title windows opening for very long. And so I'm not going to start the clock sooner than I have to. If it was a matter of like Jalen Green would be a good example. Should you have extended him? Like that could have ended up being a miss for them. But like if it was a matter of, oh, this is Reed Shepherd in year 2, but it's not. It's Reed Shepherd in year 1. And so like his trade value is not, and like I don't think Jabari, maybe his trade value is a little bit because he's coming up on extension eligibility and he's been uneven on offense this year. But I don't look at any of these players, even Cam Whitmore. I think after year 2, you still retain that mystery box appeal.
Probably so. Yeah, I think that's right.